My name is Sophia Bennett. I am 34 years old. 5 years ago, my boss stole credit for the compliance protocol I spent months developing and used it to land a major contract while I was passed over for promotion. That betrayal showed me exactly how the game worked at our firm. Now I am standing in an emergency board meeting in suburban Charlotte, North Carolina, watching my boss slam his fist on the table and accuse me of tampering with client records in front of the entire leadership team. The old ledger I discovered, hidden in Edward Langley's retired files, proves he and two of my coworkers have been diverting funds for years. My heart is pounding, but I refuse to let them bury this the way they buried everything else. I am done staying silent. If you have ever watched your boss throw you under the bus to save his own skin, drop a comment below with what happened and which city you are watching from right now. I read every single one. The whole mess started 2 weeks earlier during a routine office archive cleanup after a weekend storm knocked out power to half the building. Our firm handles investment portfolios for small businesses across the Southeast, and every couple of years we have to digitize old paper files before the storage costs get ridiculous. I drew the short straw because I am the senior compliance coordinator and supposedly the most organized person on the team. My boss, Richard Harlan, had barked the order at me in the break room, like it was some kind of punishment, his voice dripping with that fake, friendly tone he uses when he is really pissed. Sophia makes sure nothing sensitive gets missed. We cannot afford any slip-ups with regulators breathing down our necks. He said it loud enough for my coworker, Lisa Montgomery, and my coworker, Kevin Brooks, to hear and smirk behind their coffee cups. I nodded and kept my mouth shut. That is how you survive here. I have been at the firm 11 years long enough to know that pushing back only gets you labeled difficult. So I spent 3 straight days in the basement storage room, surrounded by dusty boxes, scanning documents, and logging everything into the new system. Edward Langley, one of the original partners who retired 4 years ago, had left behind a whole shelf of his personal reference binders. Everyone called him the old watchdog because he never trusted digital records. I almost skipped his stuff, figuring it was just outdated notes, but something about the way the binders were stacked too neatly caught my eye. One of them felt heavier than the others. When I opened it, the pages inside had been carefully hollowed out, and tucked in the middle was an old leather-bound ledger that looked completely out of place. My hands started shaking the second I flipped it open. The entries were in Edward's unmistakable neat handwriting, but the dates went up to just before he retired. Columns of client account numbers, transfer amounts, and dates that did not match anything in our current system. At the bottom of the first page was a folded note in the same handwriting. Account reference 4781923. They do not know about this one. Trust no one in leadership. Only you will do what is right, Sophia. My stomach dropped. Edward had mentored me when I first started. He used to say the truth waits longer than any lie. I took photos of every page with my phone, uploaded them to a private cloud folder, and slipped the ledger into my bag. I told myself I would look at it later at home. The next morning, my boss called me into his office before I even had time to sit down at my desk. My boss leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled, looking every bit the successful executive in his tailored suit. My coworker, Lisa, was already there perched on the edge of the conference table, like she belonged. She is his right-hand senior account manager, the one who always laughs a little too loud at his jokes. My coworker, Kevin, hovered near the door pretending to check his phone, but I could feel him watching. Sophia, my boss, started voice smooth as oil. We have a problem with the archive project. Some files seem to be missing. You were the last one down there. Care to explain? His eyes flicked to the bag I still carried. He knew something, or at least he suspected. I kept my face neutral. I logged everything that was there, Mr. Harlan. If anything is missing, it was gone before I started. My coworker Lisa let out a short laugh that did not reach her eyes. Come on, Sophia. We all know how thorough you are, or at least how thorough you pretend to be. The jab landed exactly where she meant it to. My coworker Kevin chimed in right on cue. Yeah, and remember that time you flagged those small discrepancies? Last year turned out to be nothing. Waste of everyone's time. My boss nodded slowly, like he was disappointed in me. Exactly. We cannot have people stirring up old ghosts. The firm has a reputation to protect. He let the silence stretch just long enough to make me sweat. Then he smiled. Finish the cleanup today. And Sophia, leave the personal nostalgia at home. Edward's stuff is ancient history. I left that office with my pulse hammering. That night, I stayed up until 2 in the morning poring over the photos I had taken. The ledger showed transfers totaling $1,900,000 over 9 years, siphoned from client accounts into a shadow reference that never appeared in any official audit. The beneficiaries were shell entities linked back to my boss's personal network, with my coworker Lisa and my coworker Kevin signing off on the internal approvals. Edward had documented everything right down to forged authorization codes. He had hidden the proof because he knew what would happen if he spoke up while he was still here. The note was dated 3 months before his retirement party. He had trusted me to finish what he started. The following Monday, I tried to do the right thing the quiet way. I scheduled a private meeting with Natalie Quinn in Human Resources. Natalie is one of the few people here who actually seems to care about rules instead of politics. I showed her the photos, explained the discrepancies, and asked her to open a formal review. She listened, took notes, and her face grew tighter with every page. Sophia, this is serious. I will pull the digital backups and loop in Victor Lang from internal audit, but you need to stay quiet until we verify. If this is real, heads will roll. I left her office feeling lighter for the first time in days. That relief lasted exactly 48 hours. On Wednesday afternoon, my boss called an all-hands emergency meeting. The entire floor was herded into the main conference room. My boss stood at the head of the table, my coworker Lisa and my coworker Kevin flanking him like bodyguards. He did not waste time. We have reason to believe someone has been tampering with archived client records. This is a direct threat to the firm's integrity. Every eye in the room turned toward me. My boss looked straight at me. Sophia, you handled the cleanup. You want to tell everyone what you found. His voice was calm, almost concerned, but the threat underneath was razor sharp. My coworker Lisa leaned forward. We cannot let one person's personal grudge destroy years of trust. My coworker Kevin added loud enough for the back row to hear. Some people just cannot let go of old resentments. The room went dead silent. I felt the blood drain from my face. They were turning it around on me before I could even speak. My colleague, Amanda Torres, one of the only people I actually trust here, shot me a quick, wide-eyed look from across the table. She knew something was off, but she stayed quiet. Smart. My boss continued, voice rising with manufactured outrage. We expect full cooperation while we investigate this internally. Sophia, you're on paid administrative leave starting immediately. Hand over your badge and laptop to security on the way out. The words hit like a slap. Paid leave. Code for we are watching you. I stood up slowly, legs steady, even though my knees wanted to buckle. As I walked past him toward the door, he lowered his voice so only I could hear. Smart girls know when to stop digging, Sophia. Remember that. I made it to my car before the shaking started. That was when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We know what you have. Stop now, or the next meeting will be with regulators about your own discrepancies. My blood ran cold. They had moved fast. I drove straight home and locked the door, heart still racing. The ledger photos were safe in the cloud, but I was now the enemy. I called Marcus Reed, an old contact Edward had once recommended, a corporate attorney who specialized in whistleblower cases. He listened without interrupting while I explained everything. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. This is Big Sophia. But going public internally first was brave. Dangerous, but brave. We need to get the authorities involved before they manufacture evidence against you. The next morning, I was supposed to stay home, but my colleague Amanda called me at 7:30. Her voice was hushed. Sophia Victor Lang from Audit just pulled me aside. He found matching discrepancies in the live system. He wants to talk to you off the record. Meet us at the coffee shop 2 blocks from the office in 20 minutes. Do not tell anyone. I went. Victor turned out to be a quiet, meticulous man who had worked with Edward for 20 years. He confirmed the transfers. $1,900,000, Sophia. And the trail leads straight to your boss, your coworker, Lisa, and your coworker, Kevin. But the firm will try to bury it to protect the brand. You need real protection. Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a call from Natalie in Human Resources. Her voice was strained. Sophia, the board just expanded the investigation. They are claiming you planted the ledger to cover your own errors from 5 years ago. I am doing everything I can, but you should get a lawyer. Now. I hung up and looked at my colleague Amanda and Victor. The 3 of us sat there in the noisy coffee shop while the world I had built for 11 years started to crack around me. My boss had turned the entire company against me in less than 48 hours, and I still had the evidence that could end him. I hung up and looked at my colleague Amanda and Victor. The 3 of us sat there while the world I had built started to crack. My boss had turned the entire company against me in less than 48 hours. My colleague Amanda leaned in closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Sophia, you need to know something. Right after the all-hands meeting, your coworker, Lisa, sent a group email to the whole compliance floor saying you had been complaining about your performance review for months and that this was probably some kind of revenge plot. Your coworker Kevin replied, all with a thumbs-up emoji, and added that Edward always favored you anyway. It is spreading like wildfire. Victor nodded grimly, tapping his phone screen. I pulled the digital audit logs myself this morning. The transfers match exactly what is in that ledger. You found $1,900,000 funneled through three different shell entities tied to your boss's personal investment accounts. Your coworker Lisa signed off on every single one, but the moment I flagged it internally, my supervisor told me to drop it or risk my own review. They are circling the wagons already. My stomach twisted. This was not random mistakes. This was a system my boss had built and protected for 9 straight years. And now he was using the same machine to bury me. I left the coffee shop with my head spinning and drove straight to Marcus Reed's office downtown. Marcus had been Edward's trusted outside counsel for years, and the second I sat down across from him, he listened without interrupting while I laid everything out: photos, notes, the threatening text. He flipped through the images on my tablet, his expression hardening with each page. This is textbook executive fraud, Sophia. Your boss did not just divert client money. He built a network with your coworker Lisa and your coworker Kevin to cover it up, and now they are trying to flip the script and make you the villain. The good news is the evidence is ironclad. The bad news is they have the firm's resources and the board's ear. We need to move fast and quiet. I will prepare a protected disclosure to the regulators this afternoon, but you have to stay off company property and keep every communication documented. He slid a fresh legal pad across the desk. One more thing. If they contact you again, do not engage. Forward everything to me. Whistleblower protections exist, but only if we play this perfectly. They will try to provoke you into saying something they can twist. I left his office feeling steadier, like I finally had someone in my corner who understood the game. But the moment I got back to my apartment, my phone rang. It was my boss. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me wanted to hear what he would say. Sophia, my boss, said that same smooth, cold tone from the day before, now laced with outright contempt. I see you got the email from counsel. 24 hours is generous. Don't you think most people would have already folded? But you always did like playing the hero, didn't you? The loyal little compliance girl who thinks she can take down the whole system with a dusty old ledger. He let out a short laugh that made my skin crawl. Your coworker, Lisa, and your coworker, Kevin, are in my office right now laughing about how desperate this looks. Return the documents, sign the non-disclosure, and maybe we let you resign quietly instead of dragging your name through the mud, or keep pushing and watch your entire career evaporate by lunch tomorrow. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. You stole $1,900,000 from clients who trusted this firm, Mr. Harlan. Edward documented it all because he knew exactly what kind of operation you were running. My coworker Lisa's voice cut in from the background, sharp and mocking. Oh, please, Sophia. We all know Edward was losing it toward the end. And you have always been the one stirring up trouble to make yourself look important. Jealous much? My coworker Kevin added right behind her, loud enough for me to hear. Yeah, remember that protocol you claimed credit for 5 years ago? We fixed it after you botched the first draft. Funny how history repeats itself. My boss jumped back in before I could respond. You have until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. After that, the board gets the full package on how you allegedly planted evidence during the archive cleanup. Think about it, Sophia. 11 years of solid work gone because you could not mind your own business. The call ended with a click. I sat frozen for a full minute, the silence in the car heavier than any words he could have said. They were not just covering their tracks anymore. They were rewriting history with me as the villain. I drove straight to Marcus Reed's office, even though it was after hours. He met me in the lobby, took one look at my face, and led me into the conference room where he already had files spread across the table. They sent the cease and desist, I said, sliding my phone across to him with the email open. Marcus read it twice, his jaw tightening. Standard intimidation. They are buying time, but we are not playing their game. I filed the protected disclosure with the Securities and Exchange Commission and the state financial regulators 30 minutes ago. The evidence from Cynthia Hayes's flash drive sealed it. By morning, they will have agents at the firm's door. He paused, then looked me straight in the eye. There is one more thing you need to know before this explodes. Victor Lang reached out to me privately. He found a second set of transfers. Your coworker, Lisa, personally authorized. Last quarter, another $250,000 that never made it to client statements. They were still active even after you found the ledger. This is not old history, Sophia. This is ongoing. The words landed like another slap. My boss had not stopped. He had simply gotten better at hiding it. The next morning, the storm hit. I was at home when my phone lit up with notifications. The firm's internal system had been locked down. Agents from the regulatory body arrived at 8:30 badges, flashing in the lobby, while employees were told to stay at their desks. By 10 o'clock, my boss called again, this time his voice cracked with panic instead of confidence. You actually did it, you stupid little... He caught himself. The regulators are here. They want everything. If you think this makes you a hero, you are wrong. The board is already drafting your termination papers. You will never work in this industry again, not after we tell them how unstable you became. My coworker, Lisa, grabbed the line, next her sarcasm dripping. Congratulations, Sophia. You just burned the bridge for all of us. Hope that moral high ground keeps you warm when you are updating your resume. I hung up without answering. Marcus called 10 minutes later. They are executing search warrants as we speak. Your boss, your coworker Lisa, and your coworker Kevin are being questioned separately. The preliminary findings already show clear violations, but the firm is moving fast to cut ties with all three of them publicly. And Sophia, they are terminating you effective immediately for policy violations during the archive project. It is their way of saving face. The next 3 weeks blurred into a nightmare of hearings and statements. I sat in sterile conference rooms giving depositions while lawyers from both sides picked apart every email I had ever sent. My colleague Amanda testified on my behalf, her voice shaking as she described the pressure from my boss after the all-hands meeting. Cynthia Hayes flew in from her retirement home up north and told the regulators how Edward had confided in her years earlier about the suspicious transfers. Victor Lang submitted his audit findings showing the pattern had continued right up until the day I found the ledger. Each new piece of evidence felt like a small win, but the personal cost mounted every single day. My boss and the 2 coworkers were placed on administrative leave the same afternoon the warrants were served. By the end of the month, the firm announced they had reached a settlement with regulators to avoid full prosecution. My boss, Richard Harlan, my coworker, Lisa Montgomery, and my coworker, Kevin Brooks, were all terminated for cause. The firm repaid the diverted funds plus penalties totaling nearly $3 million to the affected clients. It should have felt like justice, but the board made sure to leak to industry contacts that I had been the one who destabilized the compliance department and that my actions forced the costly investigation. References dried up overnight. Headhunters who once called me weekly suddenly stopped returning messages. Marcus sat with me in his office the day the final regulatory report dropped. You did everything right, Sophia. The evidence you protected exposed a fraud that had been running for 9 years. Edward would be proud, but the industry is small and protective of its own. You are being painted as the whistleblower who costs the firm millions in reputation damage. I have seen this before. It will be hard to get another compliance role at your level. He was right. 2 months later, I packed up my apartment in suburban Charlotte and moved 4 hours away to a smaller city in the foothills where no one knew my name. I took a part-time job as a bookkeeper for a local nonprofit, nothing like the senior coordinator position I had spent 11 years building. The pay was less than half of what I used to make. My savings covered the difference for now, but the career I had loved was gone. Friends from the firm stopped texting. Even Natalie in Human Resources sent one last polite message wishing me well before going silent. The isolation settled in quietly like a fog I could not shake. Some nights I still pull out the photos of Edward's ledger and the final note he left for me. The truth is patient. It waited 9 years for me to find it. I exposed what my boss and his inner circle tried so hard to bury, and in the process, I lost the professional life I had sacrificed so much to build. The regulators did their job. The money was returned. My boss and the 2 coworkers who backed him now face ongoing civil suits and possible criminal charges down the road. But I paid a price they never will. I chose the truth, and the truth cost me everything I once thought defined me. I sit here in my new little office above the nonprofit, watching the rain streak the window, and I realize something Edward tried to teach me all those years ago. Sometimes winning means walking away with nothing but your integrity intact. It is not the fairy tale ending people want to hear, but it is the one I can live with. I sleep better now, even if the future looks smaller and quieter than I ever planned. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever blown the whistle on something bigger than yourself and paid a heavier price than you expected, tell me in the comments what that moment felt like for you. Your stories remind me I am not alone in this.